My name is Sebastian Foster. I am 92 years old and live alone in a yellow house in downtown Springfield, Illinois. The same house where I have lived for over 6 decades. The same house where I built a family, raised 3 children, and lived a love story that people insist on calling exemplary. But I know the truth. I know that for years I was the worst kind of husband, the one who loved but hurt, the one who was present but absent, the one who promised but forgot. Helen passed away 5 years ago, and since then this house has been filled with screaming silences. Her shoes are still in the same place, near the kitchen door. I haven't had the heart to move them. Some objects are not just things. They are witnesses, and I need them so I don't forget how much I erred. Today, sitting on this same porch where we spent so many afternoons, I decided to tell my story. Not the version people know, the one about the perfect marriage that lasted 61 years, but the real version, the version that shames me, but that needs to be told, because perhaps somewhere there is a man making the same mistakes I made, and perhaps my confession will make him wake up before it's too late. I met Helen in 1952 at a midsummer festival on my uncle's farm. She was 18 years old and wore a blue calico dress. I was 22 and thought I knew everything about life. When I saw her dancing a square dance with that wide smile that lit up the entire yard, I decided she would be my wife. I didn't ask if she wanted to. I didn't ask what she dreamed of. I simply decided. We got married 6 months later, in a simple ceremony at the main church. Helen was radiant. I was confident. I thought it was enough to work hard, provide for the home, and be faithful to be a good husband. I didn't know there were other ways to betray someone. Silent ways, daily ways, ways that slowly destroy, like leaks that rot wood. The first years were about adaptation. We lived in a rented house near the train station, where I worked as a mechanic. Helen took care of the house and soon became pregnant with our first child, Mark. I worked a lot, came home tired, but felt proud. I was fulfilling my role. But there was something I did without realizing it, something that today gnaws at me from within. I tried to mold Helen into my image of what a perfect wife should be. I complained about the food. I said the beans were bland, that the rice was mushy, that she should have done it differently. I complained about the clothes she wore, thinking they were too simple. I complained about the way she organized the house, as if there was only one right way to do things, my way. Helen listened to everything in silence. She changed the seasoning, changed her clothes, rearranged the furniture. And I, blind as I was, thought I was helping. I thought a husband needed to guide, correct, improve. I didn't realize that every criticism was a clear message. You're not good enough. You need to be someone else. This lasted for years, not months. It was 25 years of small demands, impossible expectations, of words that hurt disguised as advice. I criticized her tone of voice, thinking it too loud at family gatherings. I criticized the way she laughed as if joy needed to be contained. I criticized her choices, her tastes, her essence. I only realized what I was doing when I heard my son, Mark, already an adult and married, repeat my words to his own wife. We were all gathered on an Easter Sunday when I heard my own echo coming from his mouth. My blood ran cold. I had planted in my son the seed of chronic dissatisfaction. I had taught him that loving was molding, not accepting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay looking at Helen beside me, her hair already gray, her face already marked by time, and I wondered how many times she had swallowed hurts in silence, how many times she felt insufficient, how many times she cried hidden in the bathroom after yet another criticism from me. But this wasn't my only flaw. There was something even worse. It was 1981. I was working double shifts at the railway workshop. The country was going through difficult times. Inflation was eating away at our wages, and I needed to ensure the family's livelihood. I would arrive home past 9 in the evening, exhausted, covered in grease, with no energy for anything. I'd eat dinner quickly, barely talk, and fall asleep in the living room chair. Helen, at that time, was taking care of our 3 children alone: Mark, Christine, and the youngest, John Peter. Besides that, she sewed for others to supplement the income. She spent her nights at the Singer machine, doing hems, mending clothes, while I snored in the bedroom. She was overloaded. She was asking for help in every possible way, but I didn't see it, or worse, I saw it and ignored it. One day, opening the refrigerator to get water, I found a folded sheet of notebook paper between the bottles. I opened it and recognized Helen's handwriting. It was a list of everything I did wrong: forgotten birthdays, unfulfilled promises, constant absences, lack of attention, lack of affection, lack of presence. Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My first reaction was anger, then shame, then a deep sadness. I put the sheet in my pocket and spent 3 days without saying anything. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to fix it. On the 4th day, I had an idea. I took another sheet of notebook paper and made my own list, but I didn't write criticisms. I didn't write defensive answers. I wrote 17 qualities I admired in Helen: her silent strength, the way she sang while ironing clothes, how she always served me the best part of the food, keeping the rest for herself, how she comforted me when I lost my younger brother, how she woke up before everyone to prepare coffee, how she never complained, even when she should have. I left the sheet next to hers on the kitchen table. When I returned from work the next day, her list was gone, and that Saturday, she called me to sit on the porch. It was the first time in years that we truly talked. Not about bills, not about the children, not about problems. We talked about us, about what was broken, about what needed to be fixed. That day, we made a rule: never again to remain silent when something hurt. If something hurts, speak. If something bothers, talk. Don't hold grudges until they become a list on the refrigerator. And for a while, it worked. But old habits don't die easy. And I had other hidden flaws waiting to appear. I discovered something about myself that shames me to this day. I forgave strangers with impressive ease, but I was harsh, relentless, and cruel with Helen. If a neighbor made a mistake, I'd shrug and say it happens. If the mechanic at the workshop ruined a part, I'd overlook it. If a friend disappointed me, I'd understand. But if Helen forgot to buy bread, I'd mention it for weeks. If she took a wrong turn while driving me to the doctor, I'd turn it into a joke at family gatherings. I felt safe being demanding with her because I knew deep down that she wouldn't leave. I unloaded my work frustrations, my insecurities, my tiredness, precisely on the person who loved me most, and she absorbed it all, silently, as if it were her obligation to carry my bad mood. This gnaws at me, because I treated my wife worse than I treated strangers, and even worse, I thought this was normal. I thought marriage was this, a place where you can be yourself, unfiltered, without kindness. But it's not. Marriage should be the place where you are your best self, not your worst. Another thing I did for decades was to use the phrase, "you should have," more than "thank you." If Helen prepared a different dish to vary the menu, I'd say I preferred it another way. If she fixed something at home, I'd point out that she should have done it sooner. If she bought a new outfit, I'd comment that she should have chosen another color. I demanded, and demanded, but I rarely thanked. It took something drastic for me to wake up. It happened when I was around 43 years old. I arrived home on Helen's birthday, bringing yellow flowers I bought from a street vendor at the bus station. I handed them to her with a smile, expecting to see her happy. But instead of gratitude, I received a criticism. She said she preferred red roses, that yellow didn't match the living room decor. I saw her gaze dim instantly. I saw the hurt in her eyes. And in that moment, I understood. I had turned our house into a courtroom where everything had to be perfect, where nothing was enough, where gratitude had died, suffocated by demands. I was chilling our marriage with demands, extinguishing affection with constant criticism. From that day on, I made a conscious effort. I started replacing "you should have" with "thank you very much." I started noticing what was right, not just what was wrong. I started thanking her for the food, for the clean house, for the washed clothes, for the coffee at the right time. And little by little, the temperature of our home changed. Helen smiled again, and I breathed again. But there was still another profound mistake I made. For years, I valued the small errors and ignored the great successes. Helen forgot dates, that's true. She confused appointments, lost papers, had no memory for numbers. And I hammered away at it. I pointed out every flaw as if it were the end of the world. But what I didn't see were the great successes. Helen took care of me for 11 consecutive weeks when I had serious back problems and was practically immobilized in bed. She taught herself to handle bank paperwork, bills, documents when I was hospitalized and couldn't resolve anything. She sat by my side for hours in complete silence, just holding my hand, when I lost my mother and plunged into a sadness that seemed endless. She loved me in practical gestures, in constant care, in faithful presence. But I didn't see it. I was too busy counting trivial errors. I focused on the crumbs forgotten on the floor and ignored the banquet she prepared every day. And then came perhaps the most painful mistake of all. At some point in our journey, Helen and I stopped being friends. We stopped being companions. We turned into partners in a domestic enterprise. We only talked about bills to pay, about the children's problems, about house repairs. We stopped laughing together. In the first years of marriage, we danced to folk music in the kitchen while she cooked. We had picnics by the banks of the Green River. We talked about dreams, about the future, about silly things that made us burst out laughing. But over time, routine swallowed the lightness. Responsibilities extinguished the fun, and we became just two tired adults sharing the same roof. We only rediscovered laughter after the children left home. Already elderly, with white hair and slow steps, we returned to sit on the porch at dusk. Helen repeated the same old stories, and I laughed as if it were the first time, because finally I understood the value of that sound. Finally, I understood that friendship is what sustains a marriage when passion cools. But of all the confessions I carry, the one that hurts the most is this. I took too long to say the essential. I always thought there would be time, that I could apologize tomorrow, thank next week, express my love next year. I postponed important words as if life were infinite, but time doesn't slow down, time doesn't wait, time just ends. Helen began to weaken 6 years ago. The doctors explained things I didn't want to hear. I prayed, negotiated with God, promised to be better. But life has its own schedule. And on a May morning, 5 years ago, while holding her hand in our bed, I tried to condense 61 years of feelings into a few minutes. I apologized for everything, for the criticisms, for the absences, for the demands, for the harshness. I thanked her for every gesture of love she showed me. I told her I loved her, that I always had, even when I didn't know how to show it. And she, with that soft voice I loved so much, looked at me and asked a question I will never forget. "Sebastian, were you happy with me?" After 61 years together, after everything we had lived through, she still doubted. She still questioned if she had been enough. She still carried the insecurity I had planted in her with my words over decades. I said yes. I said I was the happiest man in the world. I said she was the best thing that ever happened to me. But as I spoke, I knew I should have said that every day, not just at the end, not just when I was losing her. Today, at 92 years old, sitting in this house full of memories and silences, I learned something fundamental. Marriage is not about finding the perfect person. It's about deciding repeatedly to become better for the one who stays by your side. If I could rearrange the chronology of my life, I would have started with gratitude, not with demands. I would have said what I felt too late, much earlier. I would have chosen every day to be the right husband, not the husband who demands to be right. I failed many times. I erred in every possible way. But I had 61 years beside the same woman, and that was the greatest gift of my story. Not because I was perfect, but because she loved me despite all my imperfections. Her shoes are still there, near the kitchen door. Some traces are not disorder. They are remembrance. They are love that lives on, even when the one we love has departed. This is my confession. This is my story. And if you are hearing this now, married or committed, do not repeat my mistakes. Say today what I left for tomorrow. Thank now what I only thanked at the end. Love with words and actions, not just with regretted silences, because time does not turn back, and when it ends, all that remains are the words we said or should have said,